September 23rd, 2023. Guys, there's a lot about to happen in the next week. October is going to be a month to remember for sure. If you look at the different things that are happening, we've got credit card debt now at 1.8 trillion, I think it is, and people are borrowing to pay bills because they don't have the money. They either don't have the jobs or they're not making as much. There's been a lot of dents since the pandemic. One of the things that happened was that student loans were paused during that period of time. We're looking at a couple of years, maybe more than that. I think it was in 2020, but October, all of that is over. They renewed it for a while, but you still were getting interest pulled up on these things, and they're saying now that millions of Americans face a hit of at least $500 a month to their household budgets from the restart of the federal student loan payments in September, according to a new study by TransUnion. And guys, it's not a if you want to pay it or not deal. They're going to garnish you or they will take property. Now, a couple of things to think about as we read through this article. One is, what are we looking at as far as some of the negative outcomes from the lockdowns? This is a major one. Why do you think they hired 80,000 additional IRS agents that are being trained in weapons? Not 80,000, 80,000 additional. Because they're coming after this money. It says the credit reporting agency explained the impact on some 27 million student debt holders who are due to start paying again in September. Now, the numbers vary, but it's actually about 44 million total. It says, after the pandemic freeze that lasted more than 3 years, for many who graduated since 2020, it will be the first time they've ever had to make a payment. If you don't this time, they're going to come get it one way or the other. Now, again, student loans had never really made sense to me, because when I graduated from high school in the early 70s and I was out of college by the late 70s, and I never had to borrow a dime on it. I got grants, I kept my grades up, and there were student loans that were, there were grants. And some colleges, depending on where they were getting paid to get certain minorities in, and they were paying the minorities to come into that college. In other words, in my case, one of the schools that I went to, I had to drive across the county, and I went to Jackson State University, which is a predominantly black college. But and what happened, to get federal funding for that year, they had to be 10% white. They just happened to have the degree in mass communications featuring audio engineering that I wanted. So I was out at Hines Junior College in electronics and FCC communications half a day, and then for 3 years I was driving into Jackson to the campus there and to the recording studio that they rented. But guys, there was always ways to get into college if you would keep your grades up and not get into trouble, that you could. It was basically taken care of. It may have been a GI grant, whatever it was. Then you didn't go into thousands and thousands of dollars worth of debt to get your education. Now, it makes me wonder what had happened there. Was it the fact that the money was so easily loaned out, it was so easy to get one, that people didn't look into the grants and other things I think some of those are still available, if I'm not mistaken. And guys, it was not, I know it was the 70s, I know, but you're talking, $1,000 a semester, something like that, or less than that in some cases, if you had to pay it. But did they let this come in so quick and easy and make it so easy for millions of Americans to sit here, take the student loan, that they didn't even take the time to look into the other things? Because I have seen stories of people that are saying the same thing, that they did find ways with grants and other ways to get in, even to help with babysitting, things like that. So I think they made it very easy because it was the plan to come down with a hammer. It continues, and by the way, Fortune is who this is coming from. It says, for about half of the affected student debt holders, the monthly payment will be above $200 a month, while for about 1 in 5, it will be more than $500, the report found. Now, half would be around 22 million student loans. 1 in 5 would be 8.8 million people that will be given a $500 a month bill, like it or not. That's why they're looking at the real estate business going over to the big, huge holders from 5 to 6% to 60% in 6 to 9 months. Borrowers will experience a payment shock as they attempt to recalibrate their monthly budgets to accommodate this new payment. Coming out of TransUnion says the student debt restart is another headwind for U.S. consumers, whose resilient spending has helped keep the economy expanding even after more than a year of interest rate increases by the Federal Reserve. Now, we're talking about federal student loans. Why was it resilient? Guys, here's why. They were hoping, the student loan holders, they've got a pause. Some were even forgiven of their loans, I think maybe 20 million or something like that a while back. But they spent that money that they would have been paying their loans on. They borrowed other loans, they made other loans, they bought cars or other things like that, hoping that all of this student debt would be forgiven. That was some of the politicians pushing that. Well, in the meantime, the agents are being trained with weapons. It says, compounding the strain, many of the student loan borrowers have taken on other kinds of debt during the pandemic, likely at a higher cost as rates went up. Those additional debts may pose added challenges for households attempting to reintegrate student loan payments into their monthly budget. The head of TransUnion's consumer lending business, it is important for both lenders and consumers to be prepared for this new payment shock. Older borrowers, many who have taken on debt to pay for the education of their children. What seemed like such a good deal has turned into a nightmare. As soon as they started going out with these student loans, guys, what happened? The price of education skyrocketed. They knew they would use this in the end to not only get the kids what they own, but their parents what they have. It says, again, older borrowers may have taken on debt to pay for the education of their children. They tend to have larger student loan debts and bigger monthly payments. So the 500 month was not the peak. That was just 1 in 5, but some are more. The Biden administration's effort to ease the debt burden for some borrowers with loan forgiveness was blocked by the Supreme Court last month. After that ruling, the White House announced a 12-month program to cushion the blow of payment resumption. If I'm not mistaken, you got to make the payment, but what they're saying is during this 12-month period, they will not put it on your credit score. They won't turn you in if you're behind, but the other lenders will. They'll have that information. It says through the end of September 2024, that's 12 months, borrowers who fail to make monthly payments will not be considered delinquent, and the missed installment will not be reported to credit bureaus. Placed in default or referred to debt collection agencies, although interest will continue to accrue. They're going to get you one way or the other. Now, another article also in Fortune. Just go to fortune.com. It says 40 million Americans will soon have to restart student loan payments, and experts fear levels of default we've never seen before. That's the plan. But they're saying it right here, right up in front of everybody. And guys, again, got it around $2 trillion in credit card debt. People trying to pay bills with their credit cards. That is all going to be part of this level of default. The commercial, the home real estate, all of that is going to be defaulting. One reason is parents that went into debt for their kids' education. Now, we've all done part of that. I'm not saying anything wrong, but again, they paid way above the cost. And look at the education now that folks are getting. So many high schools that you see in new reports. One I saw today, no one in the school for years has been able to pass a math test. They're being taught how to be liberal. and how to protest, how to do all that damage because they're told they're not going to be in trouble for it. But that's what you're paying for 90% of the time. And that's a shame, but it's all been a big trick. Now, in the same Fortune article, it says in a good month, Selena, I won't mention her last name, has about $200 left after rent, groceries, and car insurance. That doesn't factor in her student loans, which have been on hold since the start of the pandemic and are estimated to cost $300 a month. The pause in the repayment has been a lifeline keeping the 25-year-old afloat, and that's where you see some of the economic reports. I don't even know where I would begin to budget that money, she says, who works in marketing in San Francisco. Now, after more than 3 years, the lifeline is being pulled away. More than 40 million Americans will be on the hook for federal student loan payments starting in late August under the terms of the debt ceiling deal approved by Congress, mandatory coming up in 1 week. Says the Biden administration has been targeting that timeline for months, but the deal ends any hope of further extension of the pause, which has been prolonged while the Supreme Court decides the president's debt cancellation. Now, there's a lot of people coming into this nation that are getting free education, by the way. It says without cancellation, the Education Department predicts borrowers will fall behind on their loans at historic rates. Among the most vulnerable are those who finished college during the pandemic. Millions have never had to make a loan payment, and their bills will soon come amid soaring inflation and forecast of economic recession. Gas, food, rent. Advocates fear it will add a financial burden that younger borrowers cannot afford. I worry that we're going to see levels of default of new graduates that we've never seen before. This is president of the nonprofit Student Debt Crisis Center. And guys, this is just a microcosm of everyone is in trouble that has debt. Everyone. And to be in debt to the federal government makes you stick out like a sore thumb because that's what they're prepared for. But these banks have tremendous power. You know that. You've seen the bailouts and so forth. To influence and lobby the lawmakers. Will they change it around to where they can use the IRS to come to talk to you about any type of loan payment? Especially with the bigger banks absorbing the defaulting smaller banks, making it basically a one banking federal system to begin with. They're coming after most of the Americans. But guys, we're watching it. Again, fortune.com. Check that out. I'll put a link to it. And there's maybe 4 or 5 other articles related to it that are linked to this, and you may find something there that applies to your situation. Again, we're watching it. You watch it. It's a heads up. Be safe.